Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and I'm kind of stuck in the finishing phases of another project, and that frequently takes just about forever as it turns out. So I'm going to get started building something new here, and I'm going to be working on a Pro Series rocket from Estes. It's a big one, it's going to be mid-powered, potentially high-powered I guess, but that's probably not a good idea for this particular kit. And this is a model of a sounding rocket. It's called a doorknob. And the box is huge. So let's just try to pan through here. So yeah, it's big, it's orange, it's gonna take a while. So let's get started on it. There's all manner of stuff in here, so just kind of for scale purposes. There's the body tube. This is I don't know, maybe like 3 inches in diameter or something. Nose cone's preposterously large. Fortunately, don't really need to work on those things today. The starting point, though, is to get the fins taken care of. Now, in a lot of mid-power rockets, Pro Series rockets that Estes has put out, the fins tend to be plywood. These are not. These are balsa. I've been thinking about how I want to do this rocket because typically when I do one of these Pro Series mid-power ones, I kind of overbuild them. So instead of just using wood glue, I tend to use epoxy where I can. I don't know that I'm going to do that for this particular kit, and the reason is the fins are, it's pretty thick balsa, but I've seen thicker, and this is probably going to be the weakest point. I think what I'm going to do is I am going to epoxy some of this in place. I will probably epoxy the fins in place, but I don't know. I just don't feel like this whole kit is going to be able to take a motor that has like 60 as its maximum thrust number, or whatever you want to call the first number in the rocket code. I don't think it's going to be able to take that abuse. I think maybe a composite 30 might be about as good as it's going to get. So whatever. Time to get started. As usual, first step here is to sand things down. And obviously this is the time-consuming part. I'm not going to do both sheets today. In fact, I think I'm only going to worry about one fin in earnest as much as I can, because otherwise this would be tedious, even more uninteresting than it may already be. And this is probably the most time-consuming part, at least for like active work. So I've got my sanding block. I'm sanding in nice big circles to try to get whatever obvious nastiness there is out of here. Of course, I'm never going to be able to get the grain completely gone. It's reasonably smooth to the touch, so good. Oh, look at that. There, that's interesting. I did not see that. There is a decent sized chunk. Excuse me, a little bit of sawdust in the air. I don't know how that happened, because I just literally took it right out of the box. So that's a manufacturing deformity, I guess. Not going to be able to fix that. Certainly not by sanding it, but we can at least smooth it up a little bit. It's going to have to be filled in. I think maybe this stuff is a good approach, but I don't think I'm going to try to fill it in until everything is attached. I think that's probably going to be the best bet here. There are several reasons for that. Hopefully it becomes a bit of a non-issue. So much sawdust. That's still not very good, so let's do a little bit more just over here. Again, the goal is not to make this a flawlessly smooth surface. Excuse me, because that just isn't going to happen. Sanding block by itself can't do that. Right. Suppose I ought to get this as well. Yeah, that's a decent sized spot there that got chewed up. That is unfortunate. but hopefully not a big problem down the road. Yeah. There's still, you know, the point here is not to get this, I mean, this is actually pretty smooth, but, you know, I can feel deformities here and here, so the goal is to get it reasonably smooth, not perfectly smooth. Alright, that's probably good enough. Now, there are, of course, two other fins. I will do them later. Next step is I'm going to remove this from the balsa. So I'm just going to cut along. Ooh, that I need to be careful with that. Right near that spot. The vertical ones are the easiest because you're going with the grain. All the other ones, do be careful. The goal here is just to remove the burr. You don't need to recut anything. So I'm just going to trace along. Wherever I see a burr, I'm just going to gently cut through it. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I can see there should be one right there. Yeah, and you can feel it give once you cut through it properly. Some of these, like, it looked like there was a burr there, but I did not feel one. Also, when you're doing this, do your best to cut away from the wood. So, for instance, oh, it came right out. I wouldn't want to cut this way, I would want to cut that way. So if I miss or the knife slips, I'm not going to damage the wood. And hopefully I'm not going to damage my hand either. That, of course, would be worse than damaging the wood. Alright, so pieces are cut out. I do want to sand these burrs off. These ones will come off, and I'm going to stack them up and sand them. Most of the big flat faces should be fine for that. I'm actually not going to bother with this face, and you'll see why momentarily. This one I need to do by hand with just a piece of sandpaper first. Well, I guess I don't have to do it first, but I'm going to do it first. And the reason is, like, I can't get the sanding block in there, nor can I really have any hope to sand it down by standing it up. It's too small. So that's it. Again, the only real goal here is to get rid of the burrs. I'm not trying to do anything else really. So bigger sheet of sandpaper, and I'm just going to stack these up and just go back and forth a couple times to remove the burr. Don't push too hard on this. I mean, there's, you know, half an inch or so of wood here, but that looks like a potential failure point, so don't sand that too hard. Let's see, back here. By the way, if you're doing this, you should probably do all 4 fins at the same time, but since I'm trying to do this quickly for the benefit of making this worth watching, I'm only doing 2 at a time. Alright, so we did not sand this. At this point, you have a choice to make. This kit is designed so that you can either make it scale, reasonably scaled, or you can make it a sport flyer. There's an entire alternative paint scheme too if you want to make it. So here's like the paint scheme for making it scale. There is somewhere an alternative, I think it's on the box, wherever it is. There's an alternative paint scheme you can use as well. Yeah, it must be on the box. But the thing that's critical to this point is first instruction right here. If I'm going to make the scale model, I'm going to end up beveling the leading edge of this thing. That would mean I'm going to sand it down to a point in both directions. The alternative is if I want to just go for a sport look, I can just round them. In theory, this is more aerodynamic. It would be preferable, and if we really want it to be a scale model, this is what the scale rocket actually looked like. It had beveled fins rather than just rounded ones. So you get a choice. This is way easier to do. The aerodynamics, um, beveling the tail end too, airfoiling this would be the optimal way of doing things, but I don't know. I really can't tell you whether or not this would be more aerodynamic than this. Honestly, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference because the reality is this is a pretty big rocket. Aerodynamics probably aren't going to be the top concern for us. So, your choice. I think that I'm going to at least start doing this um, scale. So I'm going to try to bevel it. All right, so I've got my rocket here. I've got my sanding block. I want to take, basically I want to make, and I could draw a line here. That might not be the worst idea. I want to go from this point to this point, and I want to bevel everything in here very gently. So I'm just going to take my sanding block and I'm going to tilt it at an angle. This is not the right angle, of course, but it's a good place to start, and I'm just going to go back and forth. And this takes just about forever. This is a very slow process, which is all the more reason why, if you don't care too much to make this truly a scale model, and you are perfectly content going with the sport version, then by all means, because it's going to be a lot easier on you. Also, by the way, that's why this dent probably won't matter all that much. Now, when you do this, you want to make sure that you are going evenly and that you don't sand too far. Once you sand too far, you can't fix that. I mean, there are ways, I guess, but you can't put the wood back on. So it's better to go slowly and slowly but surely and do it right. So once you have that initial angle in, you can really flatten out the sanding block. And just try to go up and down between the 2 points that you're trying to connect. So this tip to this tip. Sorry, some of this is off the camera. It's harder to do this at arm's length where I am. I guess I could move closer, but still. Alright, so this is going to take a while, right? The other way that you could do this once you're kind of in the groove is to lay it flat and then just ever so slightly incline it and then just sand it on a big piece of paper like this as well. This is an option as well. I'm not really sure which is better. If you do this, you probably, like, I can already feel I'm sanding my thumb a little bit, so that's a drawback. I have put a bevel that's maybe ½ an inch into this so far, so there's a lot left to do. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to get started going the other direction too. Ultimately, kind of my goal, at least for the start, is to get the leading edge narrowed down, not the whole way, but pretty close to being at a point. Remember, once you got that angle in, then you want the sanding block to basically be flat against the wood. Alright, so I've made decent progress on the angle. I can tell this is steeper than this is, so I've actually done a better job with the second side here so far than I did with the first side. But this is, I mean, this is time consuming. This is not easy. There's no good shortcut to do. You want to go slowly so you don't end up just trashing the thing, because trashing the thing would be bad. Alright, continue on. I just want to make sure that I do indeed have this beveled to the right angle. The back, I can see I am not really making a whole lot of progress on. The front is making some progress, but you know, I could see that the back end was not getting angled whatsoever, so not great. Alright, taking a peek, you just every once in a while see how you're doing. I can see that there's kind of a contour like this going on right now, which isn't great. So I need to focus on the front, I guess, a little bit more. Because you don't want it curved, you want a nice straight line, and I am doing straight passes, but sometimes you're just like making more progress on one spot than another, and that happens. Alright, so making progress, flipping it back over to the other side for a little bit more. And again, the important thing is you don't want to go past the point, so you don't want to sand too far, because once you do that, well, then you're starting to remove the wood, and you want the spin that size, you don't want it smaller. So take your time. Yeah, I suspect I'm probably not doing as much down here as I am up at the top at the moment, just because of how the strokes are going, how I'm moving the sanding block, which I think, you know, is avoidable if I were doing a better job. But you know, I'm making progress. All right, I'm not gonna keep with this. This could take me, you know, half an hour per fin. Probably not that long, but it's not exactly the best watching. Now, do be careful. The farther you go, the less wood you have and the less rigid this is going to be. So make sure you're supporting it, because you don't want to be putting too much pressure on it and end up snapping anything. That, of course, would be monumentally bad. The other reason, too, by the way, if you are debating as to whether you want to bevel this or just round it, is this is not as strong. It is definitely not as strong as if you just rounded it. So if you're flying in a place where you're probably going to have some rough landings, then maybe you just round them. If you are prone to damaging rockets either by transport or because, I don't know, it just happens, another reason to round rather than bevel. Alright, so I'm just going to stop this for the moment. Not the film, of course, but I'm going to stop my sanding for a moment and just look down. This is probably going to wrap things up here, but look down the line. Right here at the tip, I've got it down to a point. And down here, it's really close to a point, but in the middle, I do have maybe a 1/16 of an inch of flat right in the middle. So I need to be careful that I'm sanding or doing some work in the middle and not so much focusing on the ends for a while. And I can tell too, the amount that's been beveled in the middle here is really quite trivial. So this is getting close. But ultimately, when you think you're close, look at the angles. Like I'm just looking right down, well, you can look at it like this, to make sure that the amount that you've sanded on both sides is approximately even. So, you know, if this is way steeper, the angle is way steeper than this, then you need to fix that before you're done. It's also worth pointing out too that the nick there, I haven't removed it entirely. That is going to have to be filled. But a lot of it's gone, and it's not anywhere near as bad as it looked. That, I don't even know that I need wood fill on that. Sanding it a little more is going to fix it a bit more, and doing the fillet on it, that'll get rid of some of the problem too. So maybe just glue would be enough. Alright, I'm going to quickly do a little bit more sanding here in the middle, because remember that spot was still not quite down to a point. And on this side too. Okay. That's better. It's still not quite there. That's okay. Alright, so this requires, I don't know, a bit more sanding that's not worth showing. I will show you the finished product in the next video, but I gotta do this, and I gotta do 3 more. So, yes, super fun. That's gonna be time consuming. Oh well, it's part of the process. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video, which hopefully I've got all this done by then. So thanks for watching. See you then.